Like many before him, the Netziv sees in the early psukim of Parashat Ha'azinu a nevuah. The Netziv, though, has a rather unique way of parsing these first few psukim, which ultimately results in a message which he was passionate about, and a message which still very much rings true today. So let's begin in Pasuk Hey. Pasuk Hey reads according to the Netziv as follows: Shiches lo banav mumam. This is a reference to the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, which we know came about due to the Averos of Shvichos Damim, Gilui Arayos, and Avodah Zarah, all of which fall under the category of Hashchata, those things which cause destruction and damage. And so the Pasuk asks, Sheches lo, when you are Oved Avodah Zarah, does that actually damage God? And says the Pasuk, no, it doesn't. Ultimately, it damages us. The spiritual toll is ultimately a toll that it takes on the human, not on God. The Pasuk continues now and switches to Chorban Bayis Sheni, Dor Ikesh Ufisal Tal, as a reference to the generation which brought about the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, which Chazal tell us came about due to Sinas Chinam. The Netziv understands that Sinas Chinam came about as a result of a generation which was highly learned, and yet was quick to judge one another as failing from a halachic or hashkafic perspective. That is, they were constantly pointing a finger at one another, calling each other heretics, unable to see who each person really was or what their motivations truly were. And so he calls them a dor ikeshu fisaltal, a door which was learned but yet was irrational in the way in which they were applying their learning. They were confused and unable to truly tease out good from bad. Hala Hashem tigmaluzos. Is this what you do for God? A God who did so much for you, and you return the favor to Him through avodah zarah, shvichos damim, and gilui arayos. Am naval v'lo chacham. Here the Netziv points to the fact that Onkelos actually writes an am naval, a strange phrase, da amma de kabilu oraisa v'la chakimu. Amazing. He says naval is de kabilu oraisa v'la chakimu. And so the Netziv goes with this and says, Am Naval, this is a generation, the generation during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, this was the times of the Tanoim already. There was a tremendous amount of learning happening, yet they were lo chacham. Ultimately, they were unwise. Halahu avicha konecha, back to Bayis Rishon. Is this what you do for the God who is your father, who is your creator, who asacha vayechoneneka? He made you ultimately, says the Netziv, with the capacity to decipher good from bad, right from wrong. And ultimately that is something, he says, this generation of the second Beis HaMikdash failed in applying. And now so we return to the first pasuk in this Parashiyah, which is Pasuk Dalet. Hatzur Tamim Palo Kichol Rachav Mishpat. This, he says, is a general introduction to what comes later. And now again we find specific references to each generation. Kel Emunah, a faithful God, a God that is worthy of faith, and yet a generation of Churban Bayis Rishon veered from that faith. Ve'ein avel, he, however, cannot deal with that which is untrue, that which is false. And here specifically, it's a reference to the false accusations that were made between learned people during the times of Bayis Sheni. Tzaddik, he says, is a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's righteousness or his justice, and something that he would not, and therefore could not, right? Could not stomach the fact that people were following their lusts and their desires rather than controlling themselves. V'yasharhu, and ultimately God is about upright behavior. And this too he sees as a reference to Bayis Sheni, to a people who were not upright in the way in which they behaved, and this ultimately brought about the Churban. This idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu being Yashar as a description of the antidote to what happened during times of Bayis Sheni is the predominant theme of the Netziv's famous introduction to Sefer Bereshis as well. he notes at the beginning that in the language of the Nevi'im, they referred to Sefer Bereshis as Sefer HaYashar, and therefore he understands that the basic themes of Sefer Bereshis are all about interpersonal relationships, about how to be Yashar, how to be upstanding in the world and in society around us. And he writes in a dramatic and telling way that the generation of Bayis Sheni, these were tzaddikim v'chasidim ve'amalei Torah. They were literally people steeped in Torah. Ach lo hayu yesharim b'halichot olamim, but they were not upright in their daily interactions, in the way in which they interacted with other people. Al kein mipnei sinat chinam shebelibam zeh chashdu et mi shera'u shenoheg shelo kida'atam birat Hashem shehu tzeduki v'apikoros. And therefore, because of the sinah that was in their hearts, they suspected those around them, and with the language, his language is so precise. It wasn't that these people weren't religious. It wasn't that they weren't observant. They were observing in a way that was not necessarily the way that they thought they should be observing. And the minute they veered from their own vision of what this should look like, they labeled them as chutz lamachana. They labeled them as a tzaduki and an apikoros. Uba'u al yidei zer liyidei shvichut damim. And from this, they resulted in all sorts of heinous crimes. And so the Netziv writes in a way that should still resonate with us today. The al zeh hayat tziduk hadin. This is what tziduk hadin really is about, says the Netziv. Shakadosh Baruch Hu Yasharhu, ve'eno sovel tzadikim ka'elu. Kadosh Baruch Hu has no patience for tzaddikim like this, for tzaddikim who are steeped in Torah learning, but don't know how to interact with another human being, can't show kindness, can't show a certain sense of understanding and an ability to accept the fact that not everybody is going to be like them. Not everybody is going to look like them, dress like them, or act like them. So this then is the message of the opening of Ha'azinu according to the Netziv. It's a reminder that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yashar, that what he wants from us is Yashrut, and hopefully we can create that world that is a return to that sense of Yashrut, which will ultimately bring about a reconstruction of the Beis HaMikdash b'mehera v'yameinu.